Welcome back everybody to another installment on our tutorial series on making a brick breaker game in Unity. In this video we'll be looking at how we can keep track of high scores. It's always fun when you're playing a single player game like this to have a goal to shoot for. So maybe it's to beat your high score, to beat the person who played the game before you's high score. So we're going to look at how to use something called PlayerPrefs inside of Unity to store scores on our local machine on the hard drive. And how to check to see if we beat it, and to set a new one, and all that fun stuff that high scores entails. So we're going to be working in our game manager today, and in our game manager, when the game is over, so we're going to look to see, we're calling game over here, and when game is over we're doing all this, setting the game over panel true. This is also where we're going to want to check to see if we have a brand new high score. If we do have a brand new high score, then we're going to want to maybe put that into our game over panel as some sort of a message, or we can always show them what the high score was and what their score was. So we can add a little bit more to this game over panel here to see how things go. So first of all, let's look at how we can actually store our high scores and what the process is for that. So we're going to use something called PlayerPrefs here. So what we're going to need to do is, when game over is true, so let's put it here for now, we're just going to get the old high score, and then we're going to check it to our current score. So let's just make a temporary integer variable called high score, and let's set that equal to, and we're going to type in PlayerPrefs, and then we're going to say dot get int, and we need to give it the string key that we're going to store it by. So we need to come up with a key that it's going to store this on the disk with, and we have to remember what it is. So let's just use all caps here, and we're going to put this in quotes, and we'll call this high score. That's going to be the key. So we're going to try to get that high score. Now, if high score doesn't exist out here as this key, it should return us a 0, and we'll know we don't currently have a high score. Okay, once we get the high score and we stored it in this high score integer variable, let's compare it to our current score. So we can say if score greater than high score, then we know we've just achieved a brand new high score in our game. If that's the case, we're going to want to somehow indicate that to the player, and then we're going to want to store this new score that we got as our high score. So what we're going to do then is we're going to go back to our PlayerPrefs, and we're going to say set int. That's going to allow us to save it. We're going to give it the key. So the key again is our high score, all caps. That's what we're saving it under, and then we do a comma, and we have to give it the value to store there, which is going to be our current score that's stored in our integer score value. So this will now overwrite the old high score with the new high score, so that we'll see that that actually saves this new high score as the high score. Okay, so that is kind of how we can get information from our PlayerPrefs, which is just keeping a data file on our hard drive of our machine, and how we can store information back out there. So we've got get int and set int that we're using here for our score. So now let's make it so that the player can see this. We're going to have to do a little bit of work out here in Unity to change our panel a bit. So I'm going to save this script. I'm going to go out into Unity, and let's take a look at our game over panel. So here's our game over panel. Let's turn it on so we can see it, and let's just kind of double click it so it zooms in on our scene view on it, and let's kind of rearrange this a little bit. So maybe we move game over up a bit. Let's move maybe play again and quit down a bit, so we have a little bit of space to work with here. And let's maybe add another text in here. So UI text. Let's bring this up a little bit. so that we can give a message out here. So let's make this kind of nice and wide, and then we can make sure we center it on the X. And let's give it a little more space here. Okay, we'll play with this a little bit and format it. So we want this to say something like new high score, and let's just get some size on this text here, and let's get the color where we can see it. So maybe we do something kind of bright and yellow here, and it'll say like new high score, and then we can put in the score. So maybe we got lots of points here. Let's just see how much room we have to work with, and I think I like that font size right around a 35. Okay, so we're going to send a message out here that'll tell them new high score, or if they didn't get a new high score, then maybe we'll just tell them, hey, if you had that, high score is this, try again to see if you can beat it, something like that. Okay, so this was just some placeholder text. I think it might be good just to center this as well, so that way however big it is, it'll just center it to the middle of the screen. And we should have enough for 2 lines if we overrun. Okay, let's try that. So I'm going to just take out this placeholder text here. We've got our text box. Let's give this a name. Let's call this our high score text. Okay, so we got that new box there. Now we're going to have to get a link to this box so that we can update its information. So let's go into our game manager here, and let's add another text. I'm just going to put it here with my other ones. Public text. Call this high score text, and then we can access it. When the game begins, that will be empty, so we already emptied it out, and the panel will be turned off anyway. So now in game over, if we have a new high score, reset the high score, then let's go out to that text. So let's just say high score text dot text, which gets me to the text box that's there. Let's set that equal to new high score, and then we can put next to that what our high score was, and that should show the new high score there on the screen. So they'll get that message like you got a new high score, and we'll put what their score was. All right. But if we didn't get a new high score, we could do an else here. So if it wasn't higher, then we could say high score text dot text equals high score, and let's just dump in high score, which we've captured already from right here, so we can do that. And maybe we give it a little bit more here. So high score, let's do a line break. So to do a line break, you put quotes, and in the quotes you put a /n. That tells the computer line break. And then we can say, can you beat it? We'll give them a little bit of hey, see if you can do this. So if we get a new high score, we're going to say new high score, and we'll put the score, and then if they don't get it, we'll say high score, and we'll put what the high score was and ask them if they can beat it. And that will give them maybe some incentive to play our game again. So let's see if this all works together. Alright, now out in Unity, before we can test this, we just have to remember to go to our game manager and tell it what that high score text is right here. So let's go to our canvas, let's go to our game over panel and grab high score text and drag it right in. I've already turned off the game over panel here, so it's not active at the beginning of the game. And then let's go where we can see our game manager there. Alright, let's see if we can just run out of lives. I'm going to go to lives here, and I'm going to turn that down just to 1. I'm just going to give myself 1 life here, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to hit a brick here, and there we go. So I scored 2 points, I hit 2 bricks, and it gave me that message, new high score, 2. Alright, if I play again, and let's see if I can get a little more than 2 points. So let's... Alright, let's see what I have now. And I gotta use my other life here, so let's see if I can just shoot up through there. Alright, and there we go. It says new high score 3. So let's try again here, where we have, let's try again, and this time let's not get the high score. So let's, there we go. And this time it said high score 3. Can you beat it? Alright, so there you go. Now we're keeping track of high scores. Now we're keeping track of high scores, and we're giving a message whether or not we set a new high score or not. So that's a real easy way to keep track of high scores. Now, if you want to get fancy and you want to do something a little more advanced, we could look at how to keep a leaderboard, which would be storing several high scores. And I will just give you a hint that would involve using an array. So the other thing that would be nice to add is a place for them to possibly put in their name. So not only do they have the score, but they get to say, hey, I'm the one who made this score. So let's take a look at how we can do something like that. So that means we're going to not only have to set an integer for a high score, but we're going to have to set an integer that allows them to type their name in. And before we do that, we'd actually have to have a place for them to type their name in on the screen. So let's develop a little more UI here that will allow them to type their name in if they have achieved a high score. And then when they're done typing their name in, it'll go ahead and store all that information and display the right scores there. So let's take a look at how we might do something like that. Again, I'm going to go out to my canvas. I'm going to go to this Game Over panel here and turn it back on. We've added the high score text here into the middle, but before we display that high score text, or we'll put something else there which will tell them that they've achieved a new high score and to type their name in next to the score. So let's see how we can arrange all of this. We might have to make a little more space in our panel here. So let's go to the panel, let's drag it down a little bit bigger, let's center it back on the Y, and then we can rearrange things a little bit. So let's drag that up a little bit more. Let's bring our quit and our play again buttons down a bit more. And then we've got this text. Let's move that up a bit. So let's just put some placeholder text here so we can get a feel for what this is going to look like. So new high score, and then we might say something like enter your name below. And then we're going to need something here that's called an input text field. So I'm going to go to my Game Over panel, right click it, go to UI, and we're going to get an input field. This input field will allow the player to type in their information. So let's make this kind of nice and big because our font's kind of big and blocky. I'm going to center it on the X. Okay, so an input field actually has two elements in it. It's got placeholder text, which is a text box that sits on top. That's what this enter text is sitting in right now, and you can see it over here. So we can change this to say like enter your name, and then we can actually make this text a little bigger. And let's go ahead and center this as well. So I'm just going to tell them to enter their name right there. That's the placeholder text. The text that they actually type into is this other text element underneath, which is blank. When they go to type their name in here, it will show up out there, but we want to make sure that we format it so that it's roughly the same size. So on the placeholder text we put about, let's make this 35 so we can remember it. We put it to 35. So in this text here, let's also set that to 35, and let's set it to center like I did on the other one so that it'll center as I type it in. Alright, so we're just going to format that. Enter your name can be in this gray, but let's change the text that they're going to type to a different color. So maybe we'll change it to some sort of a blue here, and we'll just have to see what that looks like when we test it out. So the next thing we need to do is, if it's a high score, we want to display this message, and we want to give them this box. So I'm going to go to my input field here. Let's give it a different name here a little bit. So this is going to be my high score input field. And then we need to have a link to this so we can turn it on and off, and also so that we can capture information from there. So our coding is going to get a little more complicated here now. So let's go in and look at what we might need to do. So when we have a new high score, we're going to go ahead and set that new high score into our PlayerPref. We're also going to need to give them this message here. So let's type in let's change our message here to the one that we want for a high score. So we said we wanted to say new high score, exclamation point, and then enter your name below. So let's make it say that. And let's see, so I'm going to do this. I'm not going to show the score yet. Let's do the line break. So that was the /n in quotes. And then we'll say enter your name below. And we'll do something like that. So that will give us the message. We're also then going to need a link to our input field so that we can make it visible, because we only want it to be visible if we're entering a name. So let's go up to the top and make another variable. Let's just keep all these UI variables together. So let's make a public input field variable. We'll call this our high score input, and we'll link that out in the inspector here in a minute. And then down here then we can say high score input. So we're going to have this disabled so we can't see it unless we actually got a new high score. So we're going to say high score input. We want to go to that input's game object. So we're going to say game object, and then we can say set active, and then we can just set it to true. That will allow us to enable it. So that will show up on the screen. Alright, so that will get us set up from there. So we're saving our high score here, and then we're setting the message and doing that. If they didn't get a new high score, then we'll just go ahead and leave our message here the same as it was. So let's just take this one step at a time. Let's see if we can get this part to work correctly. So out here in Unity, I'm going to take my high score input field here, and I'm going to make sure it's disabled by default. Then I'm going to go up here to my Game Over panel and disable that. Now you notice when I re-enable it, it still leaves the high score input field disabled. That's what I want. So by default, I don't want it on. I only want to turn it on if we actually got a new high score. Okay, out here in Unity then, I need to go to the Game Manager, and I need to tell it what the high score input is. So I'm going to grab high score input field and drop it right here in my input field variable. And let's go see if I can score a new high score. So let's see. Whoa, not going to do it that way, am I? Alright, well here we go. It's still doing this if we lost. Let's see, I'm going to kill that volume, make sure you guys can hear me. Alright, want to make sure you can hear me over the top of the music there. So let's play again. See if I can get a new high score here. Alright, I think the old high score was somewhere around a 7, so let's see if I can lose my lives. Alright, here we go. Now it says new high score, enter your name below. I would just click into there, and I would type in my name. Maybe I'm the man. Alright, and then what we would need to do is hit enter and have the computer take some action at this point. So let's stop play mode here. Alright, so we've got it popping up. So now the next thing we have to do is let's look at this high score input field. When we're done entering input and we hit enter, we want to have something happen, like we want to capture what they typed into the box. So in an input field text box, you've got an on end edit and you've got an on value changed. We're going to try on end edit. So when they're done editing and they hit the enter key, that should trigger this off. So we're going to add this event and we're going to point it at a function that we want it to run. So we're going to need to make a function inside of our game manager script that we're going to call. So let's make the function so that we can link it in. Alright, so let's make a new public void. We'll call this new high score. This is going to be the function that we want to have called. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the text that was typed into our input text field. So I'm going to go to my high score input.text. That will give me the text that the player just typed in. I need to store that in something, so let's make a temporary variable here. Let's just call this a string, and we'll call it high score name, and we'll set that equal to the text that came in. Then we'll go to our PlayerPrefs. We're going to say set string. We're going to feed it in a key, so we're going to call this high score name. That'll be the key we stored this under, and then we're just going to feed it in our variable that we just made, high score name, and that will store that text. After we do that, then we will turn off our input field text box. So we'll say high score input dot game object dot set active false, which will turn that back off. And then let's go ahead and update what we were saying in our high score text box. Let's say high score text dot text equals, and we'll say congratulations, and then we'll give it the high score name, and then let's give it a carriage return here. So go to the new line, and then we'll say your new high score is, and then we will put in what the score was. And there we go. So we can give it a new message that they've got the new high score. Alright, and then we can modify this one here, high score text.text equals high score plus high score. Can you beat it? We might change this to say, let's see. Let's go ahead and do PlayerPrefs dot get string. Let's go ahead and get the name of the last person who had a high score. So that was high score name. So we'll go ahead and retrieve that. And then we will, so that'll put their name. We'll say that person's name, high score was, and then we'll put the high score in, and then we'll say can you beat it. So let's just see if we can make all this work here. Let's test it out real quick. So let's go out here now. At our high score input field, I now can finish my on edit string event here. So we're going to give it the game manager, and from the game manager we want to get the game manager script and call new high score. Alright, let's see if we can get a new high score here and see if it works correctly. Let's see, I think I need to get like 11 points here. Let's see if I can do that. Alright, and maybe one more point just to be sure. Alright, let's see. Alright, here we go, new high score, enter name below. I'm the pro. And I hit enter, and there it says congratulations pro, your new high score is 12. Now let's try and play again and see what it does if we didn't get a high score. So let's just lose our lives here. And then it says pro high score was 12. Can you beat it? So we probably ought to make it say like maybe an apostrophe there after the name, but otherwise it works the way that we have planned it to. So when the game is over, we're getting the old high score. We're checking to see if the new score was bigger. We're setting it, and we're saying new high score, enter name below. We're turning on our input text box, and then we're waiting for it to be done editing, and then we're doing this part down here, new high score. Otherwise, we're just doing this. So we'd have to say here, PlayerPrefs get string high score name plus, and then let's just put an apostrophe S on the end, and then a space, and that way it'll make it correct English and it will read a little bit better. But there you go. So we now have added high scores into our game, and we're able to check to see if we made a new one, and that is what we were going for in this video. So hopefully you found this useful. It's really easy to add this kind of functionality into your game. As always, if you have questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will get to them as quick as I can. And thanks for watching.